I'm Matt Bremer. I am an account technology strategist. I recently changed roles at Microsoft, and I'll explain what that means a little bit. I was a long time in the productivity space, so feel free to vent about OneDrive to me. I've worked tightly with the engineering team and actually helped out with some of the improvements that are coming. And it is getting better all the time, so hopefully you are seeing that as well. And hopefully this is a pretty compelling scenario for you today. So, two questions I want you to kind of, hopefully you're asking yourself is, why did I come here and what can I learn from the speaker? Well, again, hopefully you're here to learn about OneDrive Hybrid. And why should you listen to me? So I just mentioned that I just recently changed roles, so let me kind of go back a little bit. And I started my career at Microsoft in Microsoft Consulting Services. I was a SharePoint developer and consultant, so I actually have real experience. I did that for about 2 years, and then I decided I wanted to make money, so I went and became a sales engineer. And then I wrote code just for demos, which is a whole lot more fun than writing code that actually goes into production, because you know what buttons not to click and everything. But that was fun because I got to work with some of Microsoft's largest customers in the United States and complex customers and help them sort of leverage SharePoint, and then Office 365 as my role expanded. And then I recently just took a role, changed roles. You do that a lot at Microsoft. I'm now an account technology strategist, and this is probably the most interesting role, and I think a little bit more applicable to what we're going to talk about here today, because I really work with customers. I only have 4 customers now. Before I would cover like 100. And I only have 4 now, and I really kind of dig in with them across our entire stack, all our solutions, and fit them into their environments, with their line of business applications and how that works, their on-premises investments, how can they leverage cloud assets to kind of augment that and take advantage of it, instead of just coming in and say, oh, move everything, right? Because that's so realistic. And I know even over here in the UK and in Europe in particular, it's an even tougher sell because you guys have a lot of privacy concerns, and rightfully so. And hopefully you're learning more about our service and how serious we actually take that. And I'm going to get into that a little bit today in establishing trust. How many of you use Office 365 at all? Okay, quite a bit of you. All right. Would you say it's your primary? I mean, are you primarily on that, or are you kind of in hybrid? Mostly hybrid? Okay. Are you using it primarily for like email? SharePoint? Okay, all 3. So Link too. Excellent. Okay. That's typically what we see. That's not that uncommon. And we're improving it all the time. So I always like to open up a little bit of fun. So where I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I don't know how familiar you are with the United States, I wouldn't assume. Practically in the very middle of the United States. St. Louis is best known for the Arch. So you all have very beautiful monuments and architecture here. And from this picture, it looks pretty big, so you're probably thinking, well, how big is it? There's a cool shot where it's in the cloud. And so just to start off with a little fun trivia, there's a comparison of the Eiffel Tower, the Washington Monument, and the Statue of Liberty of how big the Arch is. So it's not quite the Eiffel Tower, but it's pretty cool. And it's not in France. I'm just teasing. I love France. And I love Paris, but I just had to fail the 10th bit of humor. And also I wanted to point out that it's in feet because the imperial system is way better than metric. So we're good. All right. And then this is an old joke of mine. You all probably are familiar with this screen. But today, since we're going to talk about hybrid in the cloud, you can get used to this screen because this is what it looks like in Azure. So when you're building out your IaaS environments and moving your SharePoint environments up. So hybrid experiences give users the best of both worlds. And we have all these funny little, I don't know if you guys have seen this moving into all our little sign-in dialogues with these funky little cartoons everywhere. But this really is. You'll hear people say, oh, hybrid's not real, or you have to do this. And we just gave an update on SharePoint 2016 that shows how we're going to even enable it further with with search and things like that, and really kind of make some very compelling hybrid. I think the OneDrive for Business scenario is probably one of the most compelling because it's very easy. So I mentioned before, I am a dev. I used to be a consultant, but I'm primarily a dev. I built out an entire IaaS farm in Azure, domain controller, the whole works, established hybrid with a trust and an STS, a one-way outbound search hybrid, and did directory sync with my Azure Active Directory, basically like an on-prem directory, and so had a identity sync and everything. Point being, I did all this in a matter of hours, and I'm really dumb when it comes to IT pro stuff. So we've really streamlined it. We've made it really easy. It's not quite wizard-based yet, but it's getting there, especially with the identity sync. How many of you are IT pros? How many of you are business people? IT pros first, anyone? Okay, so a lot of you. Devs, any devs in the room? I didn't think so. We'll go one. We can hang out later. And then most of you like business users type focus. So you're more interested. So we'll have a nice mix here. This isn't going to get really technical. It's more art of the possible, but I am going to show you the steps to kind of enable this because they really are easy. And I mean that. So, we always tease the IT pros when they have to write code in PowerShell, right? And so now I had the others flipped it around on them when I'm standing up servers and everything and, running everything with domain admin because it's easy and all that good stuff. But so I think the best way to do things is to kind of show the last thing first. So I'm going to go ahead and just show what this end user experience is like. Again, I have redirection going on for a particular subset of my users, and just show how it differs between those users because you don't have it's not all or nothing. You can move some users at your own pace. And if you have any questions throughout, raise your hand and interject. It won't bother me in the slightest. And if it does, I'll tell you. So let me go ahead and fire this up. Make sure my VPN's on here. It is. So I have a site to client VPN for my Azure farm, so I don't have to remote into anything. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my intranet. I do have this bookmark, I just realized, but I'm going to sit here and mess with the keys. All right, so I'm going to get prompted because I'm not on a domain machine here. So ignore the prompts. So the first user here is a user in the marketing department, and they are within the audience that I've allowed to be redirected to OneDrive for Business. And so here is my on-premises, I want to say on-premise, right? You hear people say that all the time. If you're on a premise, it's on-premises SharePoint farm. And it's SharePoint 2013. Kind of an ugly site, but hey, what are you going to do? And notice up here, I have a OneDrive link and Yammer, and I also have my sites being redirected. So this user is in the marketing department, so they are being redirected. And so what that means is when they click on OneDrive, it immediately redirects them to the Office 365 site. Now, I just have password sync on. If I were to have SSO stood up with ADFS, it would automatically detect that I have, a token and then it would pass me on. But in this case, I am going to have to authenticate with my cloud ID. But because I have sync, I can sync with my credentials of a known domain. So, and it's the same password that I would use to log on to my intranet. And so there we go. I am in Office 365 now. And so now that I'm logged in, if I were to click on that, it would then, obviously launch it because I have an instantiated session. And there, I'm in Office 365. So why that's important is, from the end user perspective, they really just know to still go to the intranet, right? They know to go to the place they're used to going to do their job. And that's important because you don't want them to have to go to yet another place. What I think really lights this up, though, is if I go back to the intranet, let's say I search for something. If I search for marketing, because I have hybrid search going, notice here, I went ahead and did a query rule, so I get a call out for my OneDrive for Business content. And so I just go to my intranet again to initiate a search, and I'm going to get everything. And it's particular to this user. So I have a search vertical defined here and a result source where it goes and it looks for everything that user has had shared with them based on that keyword set, or their own documents that they're searching. And so again, I am on-prem, but I initiate a search from one place. I don't have to go to another place. And then I can also just filter on that vertical and just click on. And obviously you would name it something better, right? I don't know. A lot of people do like My Files or something like that. It's going to think about it for a minute. So any questions so far? How many of you have seen that? Is anyone running like this today? Is it cleaner than you expected? A little more integrated? And it's super easy to stand up. This was made possible with SP1 on 2013. And so that's been out for almost a year now. And the great thing is too, OneDrive gives signal to Delve and things like that. So, with that workload up in the cloud, you can leverage things like Delve. And the other advantage you've got right now is you can also leverage the ability to go, I really wish that would work. All right. It would also do it would take advantage of DLP that we just released for OneDrive, where data loss prevention, where it can actually kind of look into the content and act accordingly. It can apply rights management and encrypt it or something like that, and it can really control privacy and things like that. You don't have those capabilities on-prem yet. Some of those are coming with 2016, but you can leverage them in the cloud today with OneDrive for Business for that file sync and share workload. So any questions on that? All right. So let's look at it from the perspective of a user that is not migrated to the cloud. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And this time I'll remember my handy dandy. So this time I'm going to log in as Amy. All right, same experience. Still has a OneDrive link. This time when I click on OneDrive, it will take me to her on-prem My Site. And this should challenge me again because it is in another web app. So bear with me here. I should do the typical user thing right now and just start matching the button, right? That always makes it go faster. So any questions while we're waiting for that? It all worked great in the speaker room. Go ahead. So that's a great question. So obviously, in this case, I've got Yammer turned on, so I don't have a lot of the sort of following and things like that. That's all, and I have sites being redirected up into the cloud anyway. As far as sharing, you could have a scenario where your internal person, if you're federated, it kind of works like they're an external user almost. If they're not licensed, it's okay. I mean, you can share externally. Typically, though, what a lot of my customers will do is, if you own like E3 or E4, I don't want to get into licensing because it's boring, but if you own like Office 365, let's say, in the ESQs, you have on-prem rights, right? So all your users could be licensed for the cloud. So if you share with them, it's seamless. And that's typically what you want to do. Microsoft will make you a deal if you take advantage of Office 365 licensing as your vehicle, and then even if you keep your people on-prem. And so in this scenario where I only have like the marketing group up and everyone else is still on-prem, I would enable everyone up in the cloud, and then they could just log in and collaborate that way.
Someone who hasn't got that enabled, they could follow it.
If it was shared with them, right. So let me log in here as Amy. I'm sorry, I started typing. Does that answer your question? Okay, fair enough. We can follow up if you want to. So Amy went to on-prem. And I do like to point out, you may or may not have noticed, the experience for OneDrive on-prem is quite different. There are a lot of things you lose, actually. In particular, the Office web apps haven't matched the same functionality, and we call them Office Online now. The online apps haven't made, they're not at parity within the cloud. You can do a lot more. You can do some really interesting co-authoring scenarios and they're quite capable on any device. The other thing you get is guest links. I can share view links or read-only or view links and edit links. That's another way you could do it with those people. You could just give them that edit link or a view link to do those sorts of things. You could share with people outside your organization by default. These are all things you don't have on-prem yet. I mentioned data loss prevention, rights management. Rights management's been around a long time, but it was tied to AD. It was pretty difficult to stand up, to be honest. And it was worthless when it got outside of your organization. Taking advantage of Azure AD in Office 365, it's really a configuration step that takes a few minutes, and you can have those rights follow it to people outside of your organization. You can dictate whether or not they can print or download a file, or whether or not it expires after a certain amount of time, things like that. So there's a lot of power that you gain just by enabling this sort of file sync and share workload, and still leave everything else on-prem. Maybe you've got some full trust code that you can't remediate yet. Maybe you've got too much content that's unstructured, and you don't want to just move everything up. Think of OneDrive for Business as personal storage. So if you have people on a file share today, or if they're on local storage or things like that, consider moving them up to OneDrive for Business. It'll give them a whole suite of capabilities that they don't currently have, and it'll do it in an enterprise manner and in a way that you can control it and protect your content. And it's leveraging SharePoint, so you can do all the records management and things like that as well as it's enterprise search. Because I'm bridging it with hybrid now, it's not another silo. It's not another place to go for people to look for things. And then if I go to a search here, just to kind of bring everything back full circle, I'm going to do the same search as Amy. And she will not get that call out now because she's not in the cloud. But again, she still goes to the same place that Garth went. So that's really it for the user experience. Any questions? Okay. Back to death by PowerPoint. Don't worry, I only have like 60 more slides to go through, so I hope that's all right.
Is there a content explorer in the OneDrive?
Content Explorer view.
Well, they explore if you want on a OneDrive library.
You can do that, yeah, it's still in the ribbon. You can open it up, yeah, if you have the, I don't think it'll work in Chrome still, and it requires one of those plugins to do it. But yeah, I just did that the other day, actually. And the other thing I mentioned before about taking advantage of moving, wait, we're not gonna waste that slide. All right. Take advantage of personal storage up there and moving personal. We're a terabyte now, and we're going to unlimited, and it really is unlimited, and it does not count against your pooled. And so if you have a bunch of content, or users have a bunch of content, they can go ahead and just move everything up in an unlimited storage. And the other thing we're doing too is, yes, OneDrive for Business is SharePoint. This is a good segue. So 1 + 1 = 1. We have OneDrive. So I like to call them OneDrive for Business, OneDrive for Pleasure, because we have the OneDrive consumer version and the OneDrive for Business. That is not SharePoint, right? That's what we have is our consumer-free version, Office Online. Similar experience though. And it's getting a little more confusing because we're converging the clients across all platforms. I actually think that's good though, because it goes with the branding of OneDrive, and you would just add kind of a location. But so, you have OneDrive Consumer and then OneDrive for Business, but OneDrive for Business is ultimately SharePoint. And so right now, we're doing some things in the cloud where we're actually going to leverage things like, other types of storage other than SQL, so you can actually do files larger than 2 GB. And that's how we're achieving the sort of unlimited storage as well. And so you're going to be able to do files in the near future of 10 GB. That's on our public roadmap to be able to do that. And actually, when we released Office Video, it's leveraging the same kind of technology where you kind of, SharePoint just becomes like an interface almost. It's not all in the content DB anymore and those kinds of things. That's a really good evolution, I think, for that, because we have the limitations of SQL and the 2 GB limit. And then also like the file names, characters. That's something early on that OneDrive for Business had a lot of problems with. You were subject to the limits on SharePoint file names, where you couldn't have special characters and things like that. Those are being eased, and eventually they're all going to be gone once we fully transition over. So a lot of improvements there. Is this confusing for you all? Go ahead.
When you say SharePoint, does it get involved in using SharePoint as document management services?
Uh-huh.
And publishing the document when it becomes available?
It does. So
Now?
it does. Yeah. So once it's in there, you can take advantage of everything. You can have workflow, you can have DLP, you can have content types, you can have, whatever the case may be. It's SharePoint. And even when we behind the scenes move it, it's still going to have all those. It's going to be transparent to the or completely abstracted from the user. So yeah, and that's the thing. You can take advantage of all those, enterprise content management capabilities and the document management capabilities. Yep, in the back.
Is that just clarification? Is that OneDrive for Business parity in terms of SharePoint Online, parity with SharePoint on-premise, or?
It's not. I was kind of pointing that out earlier. The biggest things that we're missing right now are guest links, the view links, the edit links, the ability to share with external users out of the box. You can do that on-prem, but you're going to have to, enable a claims provider with like Azure ACS, and you're going to have the infrastructure, reverse proxy to do it. The other disadvantage you would have is all the mobile apps that we've released do not work with on-prem. And so I think we're going to introduce some things with hybrid that'll kind of bring it to parity a little bit more with 2016. But I think you should think of it as a cloud service like Delve or and things like that because it makes sense. Part of the thing of the file sync and share is to be able to enable mobility across devices, right? And so if you have to VPN in or direct access in or you have to go through some modality that won't work on your phone to get to those assets, the benefits are limited. And so it makes sense to be in the cloud. And frankly, all our competitors in the space are in the cloud, right? So Box, Dropbox, whatever the case may be. What do you all primarily use here in the UK or in Europe? Do you use Box, Dropbox? Somebody said Cubby once. You use OneDrive? Awesome. I do too. What was that? Okay. Okay. The thing about those solutions are they're very good, right? I'm not going to sit here and diminish them. Particularly Box. Box is a really good solution. But here's the problem. All it does is file sync and share. And I can give you BI. I can give you enterprise search. There's so much more you can leverage with our platform beyond that. And it's not cheap. It's actually like twice the cost for that one workload. And we're really improving and investing in this area. And so I didn't want to be this kind of like to sell in the cloud kind of thing, and I don't want it to seem like marketing or salesy. But I want to point out, because I know privacy is so key here in the UK and in the EU, our defense in depth with our cloud. I mean, we're really taking this seriously. In fact, we were the first cloud service to reach ISO 27001, I think it's 2018 certification, which is the strictest certification you could have for privacy controls. And we were the first cloud service to actually reach that. We also adhere to SOC 1 and SOC 2. We've built this completely into the service. I love having this conversation with customers because the general outcome of it is we're doing things so much better than they do in their own data centers. Because they think they're secure because they can touch the server or something like that. We are really building it on protecting your content. And it is your content. We do treat it that way. And we are data custodians. We are not data owners. And that's a key differentiator that we like to point out. But we really build it into the service and have this defense in depth. And we have what we call an assume breach posture at all times. And what that does is we always kind of do war games and we kind of look for breaches and we just assume we're vulnerable. We assume that there's a breach and we have to stop it. And knock on wood, this is kind of wood, we've been able to stay out of the news on this stuff. And I think it's because of some of the controls that we're putting in and because of that assume breach posture, which is actually unique in the industry. So don't discount the cloud just because you think we can't move there because of privacy concerns or EU controls or compliance issues. I bet you'll find we can actually get through a lot of this stuff, even if you're a global customer, because a lot of people, have safe harbor compliance and things like that. we have, what am I trying to, model clauses with the EU that even if your data is in our North American data centers, some of them, and we have them all over the world. We actually have one in Dublin. In fact, my demo environment's in Dublin because I wanted to take advantage of it being a little bit more performant. Even if it leaves the borders, we're compliant with all the EU model clauses and attestations because they're comfortable with what we're doing to control things. So that's the only like cloud pitch I'm going to give you here, but I just wanted to kind of give that background and just kind of think about it and check it out. And we really call this a trust conversation because that's what it is. We want you to trust it and think of it as an extension of your own data center. And we're banking the future of Microsoft on this. I mean, it's that much. It's at the core of who we are now, and delivering this stuff and having it trustworthy is key. So we were kind of talking about key requirements for enterprise file sync and share. Anywhere, anytime access to work and personal files. And this gets back to the point what I was trying to make where if you have it on-prem, you're kind of limiting yourself because unless you've opened it up and you have a way to get to it easily. And the mobile apps, this isn't the same Microsoft. I carry an iPhone. It's okay. Satya says it's okay now. And we have that sort of Windows first modality, which I am very happy is now gone, right? I mean, there are actually apps on iOS that work way better than Windows Phone. And in fact, I don't know if you guys saw, we launched Office 365 Video and Delve apps last week. They were on iOS and Android first. So it's a different Microsoft. We are really embracing cross-platform. We want to be on the devices that you all carry. And we really want to kind of have it be a first-class citizen. Seamless integration with familiar collaboration tools. So I saw Office on the iPad back in 2012, and it took as long as it took to get there. And how many of you use an Office on Android or iPad now, or iOS? Quite a few of you. So I was so happy when that was finally there, because it's capable, it's really good. It's not like a port. I think it's great. And it's a native app built on those platforms, and it works like you would expect it to work. So being able to use Office across everything, not having to get another tool. And we're really kind of, streamlining how you're able to do this now with 365. You can, if you have Pro Plus, you can install it on 5 devices, 5 tablets, and 5 phones. Dirty little secret: we don't track the tablets and phones. So you could install it on 6 if you will. We won't come get you. We know you do it, but we're okay with it. And the point everyone makes is like, who has 5 tablets? And I'm like, I have 7. So I'm already over. So. But I know I'm probably a little bit of an outlier there. Enterprise-grade security, compliance, and IT control, and this is key. I kind of meant to show that with the defense in depth. Yes, we're promoting you, we're advocating for you to put some of your data into our cloud, but we have very robust customer controls where you still maintain control of that data and can implement your policies and hopefully have a better security posture than you have today. So now I have to do the obligatory, stock photo, Microsoft marketing, but these are actually good. So this just kind of goes through, I was kind of another failed attempt at humor, no one laughed. One place for everything, well really 2. We talked about OneDrive for pleasure and OneDrive for business. But again, think of it as personal file storage. Yes, when you go to a team site, you can sync with OneDrive for business, but a lot of the apps still have the modality that it's your personal storage, it's your My Site. And those things. So think of it in terms, especially in this scenario, think of it in terms of personal storage. You're moving people's personal storage to the cloud, everything else stays on-prem. Anywhere, anytime access, it's a key pillar. We've got 1 terabyte today, moving to unlimited. This next-gen sync client is coming very soon. I'm hopeful it's going to be earlier than everyone thinks, and what that's going to enable, I think right now we have a 20,000 item sync limit. You're also going to get selective sync. It's going to really be at parity with the OneDrive consumer sort of functionality where you have selective sync. And we were getting rid of the Groove underpinnings. I don't know if everybody realized that. It was using the Groove, and it's terrible, right? And so we're really going to start leveraging the OneDrive for Business Sync. OneDrive Consumer, or Pleasure, however you want to look at it, actually owns engineering for OneDrive for Business now. And so they are bringing all that capability there. So yes, it's still SharePoint, but it's really kind of growing up and getting into a really robust sort of sync engine that was proven in the consumer space. I kind of mentioned before, this isn't the same old Microsoft. So again, every major platform, we've got apps out there now and native experiences. And we're also building responsive interfaces into things. If you go to an Office 365 personal site or OneDrive for Business site, it immediately goes into a responsive UI that is all touch enabled and everything. There's nothing you have to do for that. It just does it by default. And the native apps, we have released the converged app on Android and iOS. So you have OneDrive Consumer and OneDrive for Business together now. And we've also enabled, the ability with Office, I'm sure everybody saw this, you can save to other locations. Like you can take advantage of the Apple file locations. So it opens up services like Box, Dropbox. And you can also, we have that partnership with Dropbox built right into the apps as well. So we hope that you'll find an advantage with OneDrive for Business, and I think there are. But we're not going to sort of limit our mobile experience to just our services. And so I think that's a very positive step forward. I talked about real-time collaboration. Another advantage of being in Office 365 for this workload is to take advantage of the Office Online apps. And they're very capable, and you can have a really robust co-authoring experience. And the Office Online apps, I actually use them quite a bit more than the client apps themselves when I'm on the go because it's just so much faster. I don't have to download that PowerPoint. I don't have to download that Word doc. I can just do edits. You can't do things like, Power Pivot data tables or something like that in Excel, but you can do quick editing. And RFP responses are something we do a lot of, so those are great. My session on Wednesday, if you're interested, it's gonna be all demo. It's gonna be art of the possible, just showing you what the experience is like. So. If you want to come check that out and you haven't seen all the capabilities, I'm going to go through a lot of those scenarios to kind of go through that. Social conversations, the integration with Yammer is actually really great. You kind of get the context of a document and it follows it. And search and discovery, because again, it's not a silo. If you take advantage of another file sync and share service, you're going to have another silo. It's within your e-discovery suite. It's compliance and all that because it is SharePoint at the end of the day. We kind of talked about enterprise grade, built-in security, continuous compliance. I won't read the slide, but there you go. And the flexible hybrid options. So right now you have the notion of BCS hybrid, Search hybrid, SAP Duet hybrid, which is a rare one. And now we have OneDrive hybrid. And then 2016 is really going to we just made that big announcement. I don't know if anybody saw that. I think it was early last week. They kind of laid out what the future of on-prem SharePoint is. And if anyone's going to Ignite, we're going to have a lot more on that topic at Ignite in May. But we're going to really kind of enable some slick things with like the ability to have, say, an online search platform that will integrate with your on-prem that will provide signal to Delve. So again, enabling sort of that hybrid modality where you can or single to Office graph. Delve's built on top of Office graph. So you can have that commingled, if you will, cloud and on-prem corpus, but to the user it'll only be in one. Like even in this case, I have a different vertical or a call out. It won't be that way in 2016. They'll be all the same index and corpus. So I think that's a huge leap forward. Yeah. So, and some of that was detailed in the blog post that we announced last week. So the focus for the next version of SharePoint on-prem is really going to be, we're definitely evolving the product. We're bringing a lot of the stuff we proved out in the cloud with like security and things like that down to on-prem. That's a great evolution, but we're also going to enable more hybrid experiences to kind of move this along. And so now I'll go through and kind of show you what you need to do this. It's actually very easy. So let me shut down Amy here. I need to be an admin. Okay. It really doesn't want me to shut it down. There we go. So let's just go and get into it. So the first thing I need to do, I'll just kind of walk you through the central admin options while this is spinning up. So the first thing you need to do is you need to decide an identity model, and we have three. You can have Cloud ID, where they have a separate login and password, or you can have I need to remember to duplicate my screen. There we go. Or you can have, what I did here, I had password sync, where it actually takes your user principal name from your on-prem environment and your password. It's password hash. I hate password sync. It's password hash. It's one-way hash. And it enables you to use the same credentials, but it is still kind of a separate thing. It's not an integrated login, things like that. And then your third option is single sign-on. So, and that's probably the best option. We obviously, our preference is probably, or our documentation, I shouldn't say preference, is with ADFS for that. But I do have customers using things like Okta and Ping. You know, Office 365 supports all of that. You can use pure SAML now. We're enabling SAML and all of that into the Office clients as well. And so you can kind of have that seamless sign-on experience even if you're not leveraging our identity path. Probably one of the easiest ways is just to leverage Azure AD and then sync from that. And we now, if you've used DirSync, has anyone ever set up DirSync, the IT pros in the room? Have you upgraded to AAD Sync? Good, everybody has. Have you tried AAD Connect? You have. You don't count, Todd Clint. AAD Connect, and this is probably to Todd's chagrin, makes it so a dumb dev like me can even do this stuff. It's all a wizard. I'm like, click, click, next, done. It literally took me like 30 seconds. So where DirSync was, for those of you that set up DirSync, it's so much better and so much more reliable to be able to do those things. So once you've got your sync done, and really all I did there was I provisioned a server in my domain, installed AAD Connect, had the domain administrator account, fired up AAD Connect. It was a wizard, and it said, and that's Azure Active Directory Connect, which is still in preview, but it's coming very soon to be released. And all I did was provide it the credentials and it was done. And it went ahead and did everything. I already had my UPNs established, and I already had my domain verified up in Office 365. Once you've got that established, then we have this new capability down here in the bottom left, Office 365. And you guys probably can't see that very well. Can you see it in the bottom left? Okay. You guys definitely can't, so I apologize. Here, let me. Can you see it now? All right, right on. So we'll switch that up. So you got some new options here. And you got configure Yammer, you got configure OneDrive and Sites links. So let's go ahead and click on OneDrive and Sites links. And I'm going to go ahead and expand it again. And so it just kind of walks you through. It even allows you to go ahead and sign up for Office 365. Of course, we're going to make that easy, right? And go ahead and, here, buy Office 365 for wherever you can. And you can go ahead and assign the licenses, if you will, because you would have to go ahead and enable them once they're synced. You then go in and assign the licenses. In this case, I assigned E3 licenses. And then you just put in your URL that you have up there. And the way it works is whatever your tenant name is, it's followed by a -my. That's all provisioned for you. It's not like on-prem where you have to go and establish a my site host. It all just kind of happens out of the box. And in this case, I chose to use an audience. And I like to do this for, I prefer this and I advocate for it with my customers because you can be gradual about it. As you reach velocity on migrations and things like that, you can kind of move people at your own pace in very controlled groups. There are some groups where this makes a ton of sense for. I typically see the tip of the spear with wanting to enable this is with sales and marketing. That seems to be very mobile people that like to do it, and IT. That's typically what we see. And then as those are proved out, you start maybe bringing everybody up and doing those things. This will enable you, and you just do an audience. Everybody knows how to define an audience, right? You just define an audience like you did before based on some sort of attribute. In this case, I'm using the department name. And I am just limiting the redirection to there. And I'm also redirecting the sites page.
Is there any way you can customize the URL?
This is your options right now.
Yeah, I don't know where.
What would you like to see?
Well, it's basically this flexibility there.
I'm curious what more flexibility you need, though. I'm generally curious because I'd like that feedback. Sure, but you also lose a lot, as we talked about, with the functionalities of OneDrive for Business. So again, we're talking about a personal storage workloader here, right? So this is, I think, a nice bridge to not move all of your SharePoint environments where you still need that flexibility or you need that full trust code, because there are valid reasons to have that for sure. But for personal storage, you'd be hard pressed to win me over on that one, and we can definitely discuss it, because what you get with mobility and the ability to kind of have that across devices, when I get a new machine now, and I get them pretty frequently, I'm up and running in like 20 minutes with everything. And it's not a backup to an external drive or anything like that. It just immediately syncs down. If I'm out watching my kids do something and I get a call, I can get on my iPhone and I freaking pull up a document and I can respond right there. And I don't have to leave, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to go get my laptop or my Surface or anything like that. So the flexibility I gain from having my personal storage in Office 365 with this solution is pretty great. And so once you configure all that, you literally just hit OK. And then it takes, a second or so. And you're able to go ahead and then immediately, like I showed before, when I logged in as the user that is being redirected, they are redirected to Office 365. And then the other users are not. They remain on-prem. Pretty easy. If you want to configure Yammer, that's the other option you got. That is really just one button. You just activate Yammer or deactivate Yammer, and then it replaces the newsfeed link with Yammer. Where it gets a little bit more interesting is enabling hybrid search. So the first step you have to do for the hybrid search scenario, you don't have to do this. I think it's useful because you're still training your users to go to one spot to search for things, and that's really what you want for search. And so if you choose to do this, I really advocate at least doing the one-way outbound hybrid search topology in architecture to do that. And the first step you have to do there is you have to replace the STS trust on-prem with Office 365. And that's a whole lot of PowerShell. And somebody smart like Todd Clint could probably help you with that on one of his great webcasts. I stand on the shoulders of others. Minnis and Neil Hodgkinson are doing, I think, like a couple 4-part series. They do this stuff in 10 minutes. They're great resources to kind of go watch if you're interested in what all is involved to kind of establish the different hybrid scenarios. But really, it's not that bad. I mean, the scripts themselves are pretty easy. Like I said, I did it. It was nothing. And I know enough about servers and IT pro stuff to be dangerous. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just start messing around with the domain and no big deal. But I really got it up and running pretty quickly, and it was really easy. So once you've got that established, the first thing you're going to want to do is you want to verify it. And so what we do is we go to security. And what we have to establish is a way for Azure ACS, Access Control Services, to provide a bridge between our on-prem environment and our cloud. And the reason identity sync is key here is that right now, the email address of the user has to match the UPN. Am I saying it right? Has to match the UPN in the cloud. Otherwise, you're not able to execute that query on behalf of the user. It has to have that for the ACS to be able to translate it. So when I was Garth and I executed that, these two things here, these ACS trucks, are what enabled that. And so that's what tells me that I've got this configured okay. And so once I've got that established, it'll also provision where's my service applications? There they are. It's been a while since I've been on-prem. Am I talking like an IT pro, Todd? Are you impressed? Are we going to co-present something? So down here, I've got my proxy for Azure Access Control Service. I'm just showing you these things because these are good places to verify that your STS was established correctly. When you see these things here and you're able to confirm the GUIDs, this is a good way to tell that you're okay and to know that you're all good. So once you've got that established, now you want to do something with it. And so now I'm going to go into the search application, and I prefer to do it in the global application, but you could just as easily do this at a site collection level as well. And so I'm going to go into the search service app. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define a result source. And here's the result source that I defined. If I was doing this from scratch, I would do a new result source. And let's just go ahead and walk you through what that looks like. I would give it a name, and I'd want to select remote SharePoint. I would give my remote service URL. And so this is key. While we're enabling this for our OneDrive for Business, we actually need the root of our Office 365 instance. So in this case, it's bremer-sp-evo2015.sharepoint.com. I don't know if you saw it before with the redirect, I had a -my on there after my name. So you got to go to the root, not to the my site host for that. And you want it to be SharePoint search results. You want to leave this alone as search terms. And this is key. You want it to be default authentication because in this case, I'm doing password sync. If we had ADFS, we would use SSO, right? Okay. Yep. So I hit save, and then if I go back, I've got my result source. And the reason I like to do the result source first is because this really allows me to verify. And so what I do then is I do a drop down, and I want to go to test source. Can you guys see that okay? I go to test source there. And when I click on this, the important part here is I get succeeded. That means that my STS certificate's okay, that my trusts are established, that I'm authenticating to the cloud on the query, and that everything's as it should be. The other thing to note is, in this case, I am logged in as Garth in the central admin because it does have to be a user that is also enabled in the cloud to be able to execute the test successfully. That'll have you running in circles a little bit if you're logged in as like the system account and they're not synced to your cloud environment. So that's just kind of a way to avoid a little frustration. I may or may not have encountered that myself. I'm going to keep promoting how easy this was, but that was one of the ones that got me. And so I click OK. And so now that I've got a result source, now I want to do, so let's do like I made that call out. And from in here, I did, where is it? So I define it with the context of the service, and I named mine O365 OD4B. All user segments, and then, I can have whatever I want. I can have promoted results. I can do, query rule. I won't go through creating a query rule. Here's the existing one that I've already got defined. If I click on it, it just goes through. One of the key things is you want to remove the query conditions because you just want it to execute whatever the user has input. And so removing the query conditions, before, that's where you define like if a certain term is hit, and then I'm going to go ahead and change the template or something like that. And then you got your action. So it's all standard search stuff there. And then if you want to add the vertical, all you do is you go to your you go to your search center. So in this case, I'll go here. And you go to site. So the first thing you want to do is go to site contents. And you want to go to pages. And this is just like adding your own custom results page, right? And so you want to do a new item. In this case, I added my O365 OD4B. How many acronyms can I have in one page name? And then you just kind of go through and you create your page. And if I go into this one, it's a search results page. And it just kind of shows what the vertical looks like. And then on this page, I want to edit it. And the key thing here is you want to go to the search results web part, and you want to edit that web part. I know you guys can't see over there with this podium, but I'm sure you're familiar with editing a web part. And then from here, you want to go to change query. And this is kind of where you define everything. So I'm going to go to my result source that I've got there for the query. In this case, I'm using my service. I'm going to leave everything pretty much the defaults alone, and I'm going to hit OK, and you can go ahead and do a test query. That's really all I did was select the result source and just hit OK. and then you want to hit apply, and you want to go ahead and probably hit OK, and then you want to check it in. This piece needs to be improved, right? It's like 6 clicks to get it to apply. And then you want to publish it. Yeah. So any questions? I mean, a lot of it's, the STS stuff I get might be a little off, but the rest of it's just standard SharePoint. Go ahead. You've got inbound, right? Yes, so you can have an inbound topology, so the reverse, and you can also have a two-way topology, where it'll do both. I don't like two-way topology, do you?
So the inbound stuff is exponentially more complicated to set up.
It absolutely is.
I mean, so this is an advanced, or this is, if you did the beginning move, those are big on you.
No, you're absolutely right.
The other way, you got to stretch first, you got to hydrate it. I mean, so the two-way, of course, requires that. So.
Yeah.
But I like that, regardless of where they search, they can find their stuff. But.
This is a great way to start. It's the crawl, walk, run, right? Crawl, walk, run. And I'm fairly confident 2016 is going to make it a lot easier because we're building it with this stuff in mind. So you're going to see a lot of improvements in this area. This is where we're at today. And you're going to probably see a lot more of this in a month at Ignite and how this is going to evolve. And I still think this scenario is probably one of the key ramps to the cloud, in my opinion. I think it's the easiest one to make sense of. It's also a great win for your users. Your users today are probably using some kind of file sync and share system outside of your control. And so it'd be great to give them one that's effective, that does enable productivity, and has a way for you to still achieve your security posture and your controls. Any questions on that before I go back to PowerPoint and close this out? All right. By the way, any Star Wars fans? Anybody see the new trailer? It's pretty awesome, right? All right, cool. I think I watched it 100 times this weekend. The Chewie We're Home made me squeal like a 12-year-old. This is pretty cool. So recently, and I got some links down at the bottom, and if you'd like, I can tweet them out too. You can do this in 2010 now. So if you have some 2010 infrastructure laying around, you can actually redirect to OneDrive. It's obviously not as clean, but you can have a big blue OneDrive button up there and, hey, look, hybrid. We don't need to upgrade to 2013. But you can do some interesting things. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Steve shares the decks. And so what I've got here in the deck as well is just a bunch of the scenario type things of what I'm going to go through in my session on Wednesday, just kind of art of the possible type stuff. And so just to kind of give you an idea what it's like across platform, I'm not going to go through all these. But there's some really neat stuff, like we're mentioning search and some other advantages. So that's a really horrible shot. I apologize. But the smart search, when you search from your OneDrive for Business, it'll go ahead and find wherever you have rights to things, and it'll kind of integrate with Delve and go through some things. So you can do some really interesting things. We also have the ability with Exchange Online Outlook Web Access. You have the ability to do what we call modern attachments, where you can actually put a link to a OneDrive document directly from Outlook without attaching one. So that's huge, right? I mean, people still probably primarily collaborate in Outlook, but you never know who has the right version, or you're limited to, a smaller document or things like that. And so having that kind of native experience, so where it automatically will upload and share for you just based on who's on the to line, that's a pretty powerful experience. Easily drag and drop, all that good stuff. So, OneDrive for Business it's coming along and it's growing up. And if you had a bad experience with it previously, I encourage you to check it out again. The sync client has improved greatly, and the next gen sync client is really going to be a leap forward, and it's going to get a lot better. It's stabilized, but some of the stuff that's coming with the OneDrive for pleasure client, if you will, the OneDrive consumer aspect of it, are really going to improve it. And we now have a sync client on Mac OS. We have it on iOS. We just released mobile device management baked into Office 365, so you can do selective wipe. You can do conditional access policies, where you say if a device is trusted or not, if it meets a certain security posture, do I allow it to connect? So there's a lot of controls that you've got that we're really baking into the service, and we're expanding it. With Windows 10, we're going to introduce the notion of containerization on a PC as well as remote wipe on a PC. So getting some of those kind of MDM capabilities into the PC, because right now the laptops are a really hard thing to control, right? If people sync and they go out with assets, you know, they're kind of out of your control. That's where RMS can play a role, but really having that in an encrypted container and being able to remote wipe it. And then we've also got on our roadmap to be able to do that on a Mac as well. So really not mobile device management at that point, but device management. And we're enabling all those things through Office 365. And it's Intune on the back end, but it's baked into the service. So a lot of capabilities with that coming that way. So again, leave your on-prem investment, leverage your on-prem investment where it makes sense, heavy BI, right? Or just, you know, full trust code, whatever the case may be. We've indicated and stated that we're going to continue to support on-prem. You're going to continue to see some investment there. So I'm not going to be one of those people that you're saying, oh, on-prem's so, you know, 3 years ago or whatever. I think there's some advantages of going to Office 365, but I think there's a lot of cases where on-prem still makes sense. And so doing things like this scenario where you can kind of leverage both, I think it's a good ramp, if you will, and a good bridge. So I'm cruising through all these, but these go on forever. They're really just there for reference. So that's it. Thank you all for attending. Have a great rest of the day.